All right, everybody, welcome back to the deep dive.
Yes, welcome back.
Today, we are going to be diving deep into IRS Tax Tip 2025 ZAL 2.
Oh, yes. Fascinating stuff.
It is.
This is all about marriage and divorce and how those life events impact your taxes.
Yeah, so even if you're, single as a Pringle right now,
Right.
this is still something that could be, relevant to you down the line.
Absolutely.
And also it can help you with just tax planning in general. Like,
Right.
what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, planning for the future is always a good idea.
Always.
And it can definitely save you a lot of headaches come tax time if you kind of think about these things in advance.
For sure. For sure.
One of the most important things to remember is that the IRS looks at your marital status on December 31st.
Oh, interesting.
And uses that to determine your filing options for the whole year.
So wait a minute. So like even if you got married, on December 30th,
Exactly.
you're considered married for the entire year
That's right.
for tax purposes.
Yep. Even if you were single for most of it.
Wow.
That December 31st deadline is really important.
That is wild.
It is pretty wild.
So you're telling me like you could save thousands of dollars in taxes just by getting married on December 30th versus, January 2nd?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Wow. It really highlights why understanding these rules can be so beneficial.
Okay. Okay. So we got to remember December 31st.
December 31st, that's the magic date.
I got it. What about couples who are separated,
Okay.
but not like legally separated or divorced?
Right.
Like, does that December 31st rule still apply to them?
It does.
Right.
Even if you're living apart and consider yourself separated, the IRS still sees you as married unless you have that official legal separation or divorce decree.
So it's not enough to just like, call it quits.
Right.
You got to like legally make it official.
You need that paperwork.
Yeah. Can you break that down for us? Like
Yeah.
what's the difference between just being separated and being like legally separated?
Sure. So think of it this way. Separated is like taking a break from the relationship.
Wow.
You're living apart, you're maybe figuring things out,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no legal document backing that up.
Gotcha.
Legally separated, on the other hand, that's like having a referee step in.
All right.
It's a formal court order that outlines things like financial responsibilities, maybe custody arrangements if you have kids,
Yeah.
but you're technically still married.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it really sets some clear boundaries and guidelines.
So basically like if you're going through a separation,
Yes.
talk to a lawyer and make sure that you are,
Absolutely.
doing things the right way,
Especially when it comes to taxes.
especially for taxes.
Yes, definitely.
And speaking of making things official,
Yes.
let's talk about name changes.
Okay.
If you get married or divorced and you change your last name,
Right.
the IRS needs to know.
Absolutely. And I would imagine that's because, if the name on your tax return doesn't match what the Social Security Administration has on file.
They might think you're like a totally different person.
That's right.
And then that could really delay getting your refund.
Yeah, you definitely don't want any holdups with your refund.
No.
So make sure you update your name with both the Social Security Administration and the IRS.
And don't forget your employer too.
Oh, yes. Good point.
You got to make sure that like your W-2 is correct.
Absolutely. That's crucial.
Yeah. And speaking of updating things, your address is super important too.
Oh, definitely.
If you've moved, you got to let everybody know.
Yeah, the post office.
The post office.
Your employer.
Yep. And the IRS.
And the IRS, of course.
Right. And you can do that, online. You can send a letter. You can call them.
Yep. There are a few different ways to update your information.
So yeah, just make sure you do it.
Definitely.
Okay. So here's something that I don't think a lot of people realize.
Okay.
Getting married or divorced can actually affect how much tax is withheld from your paycheck.
That's right. It's true.
So it's almost like you need to adjust your budget after a big life change.
Exactly. It's all about recalibrating
Right.
and making sure your finances are aligned with your new situation.
Yeah.
Luckily, the IRS has this great tool called the Tax Withholding Estimator.
Oh, yeah?
You can find it on their website.
Yep.
And it can help you figure out if you need to adjust your withholding.
Okay.
So you're not hit with a huge tax bill or a surprisingly small refund later on.
Yeah, nobody wants that surprise tax bill.
Yeah, nobody does.
So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We talked about that December 31st deadline.
Right.
The importance of updating your info.
Yep.
Checking your withholding.
Uh-huh.
Now let's talk about the main event, like filing status options.
All right, let's get into it.
For newly married couples.
Okay.
You basically have two choices, right?
That's right.
You could file jointly or separately.
Exactly. And figuring out which one is better for you really depends on your individual circumstances.
Okay.
Sometimes filing jointly can save you a lot of money in taxes, but sometimes filing separately might actually be the better choice.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Not at all.
Gotcha.
It's important to look at your specific situation
Yeah.
and see what makes the most sense for you and your spouse.
So, crunch those numbers, figure it out.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been a really, really informative deep dive. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Okay.
If your marital status could change in the next year, how might that impact your tax planning right now?
That's a great question to consider.
Yeah. So think about it.
Food for thought.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on the deep dive today.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
And be sure to check out those IRS resources we mentioned for more personalized advice.
And remember, we're here to help guide you through the complex world of taxes.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.